Okay, here is the next part as I'm adjusting my camera again a little bit as we go here. That's a little better. Okay. Here's the next section, part 2 of our section on memory. Now, the primacy effect and the recency effect deal with something a little different. Now we're going to be talking about long-term memory. You can kind of see it at the top of your slide, I hope there. Now, unlike short-term memory, and you want to write this down, long-term memory refers to information that is stored away. Okay, it's not active conscious knowledge. It's not stuff that you're thinking about right now. However, we're talking about information that you can pull up and place into your short-term memory. Okay, you have probably millions and millions, maybe billions of pieces of information that are stored in your long-term memory. And you can't possibly think about all those things at the same time, but you can pull them up, and I'll prove it. So I would ask the question right now, how many of you are thinking about your date of birth? Probably none of you. But now that I've mentioned it, you are. You can pull that information out of your long-term memory and you can think about it right now. How many of you right now are thinking about what your first grade classroom teacher looked like? Probably none of you, except now you are because I've prompted you and you can pull that information up. If you have an automobile, are you thinking about what your car looks like right now? Probably not. But again, you can pull that up now that I've mentioned it. So we could go on and on and on. Now, some components of long-term memory that I want to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is called the primacy effect. And we'll do a little activity if I can pull it off here on this video. Prime literally translates to one or first. The primacy effect by definition, and you want to write this down, refers to the fact that we have a tendency to remember things at the very beginning of a list or at the very beginning of a sequence of events. So again, we remember the stuff that happens first. Also, we have what's called, or demonstrate what's called the recency effect. If something happened recently, that means it just happened recently. So the recency effect says that also we have a tendency to remember the things at the very end of a list or at the very end of a sequence of events. So we remember the first stuff, and we'll remember the stuff that just happened. Now we'll get to the von Restorff effect in just a second. We'll come back to that. But we remember the first stuff and we remember the last stuff. If I would ask you to think to yourselves, if we were in class, I would ask this and we would answer it out loud. But I will bet that regardless of what time you're looking at this, I'm going to assume that you're looking at this video in the afternoon or the evening. If I ask you to recall the first 3 things you did when you got out of bed, most students say that they can recall that pretty easily. I remember this morning the first things I did, I got up, I let my dog out, and then I brushed my teeth. I remember that pretty well. Primacy effect, we remember the first stuff. Also, I'll bet you can remember the last couple things that you've done. You've been watching this video, hopefully, taking notes, hopefully, so you probably remember, well, yeah, I remember the last couple things I did. I wrote down a definition of primacy effect, and we're talking about the recency effect. You have that stuff pretty fresh in your short-term memories because it's stuff that you're dealing with right now. It's the stuff in the middle that kind of gets us a little bit. If I ask you to identify what you were doing precisely in the middle of your day at, like, say, let's just say 1:38 p.m., you might have a hard time. If this is nighttime and you're looking at this video and you're trying to think of what you did at 1:38 p.m., you would have to stop and really think about it. And you still probably would not be able to tell me exactly what you were doing, exactly what you were thinking about, exactly who you were dealing with. You might, but probably not. So we're going to do a little experiment, and you can stop and start the video. You certainly don't have to do this activity. If we were in class, I would do it with you in class. But I always do a word list, and you can test yourself and stop this video, pause it, and see how you do. I'm going to put a list of words in front of you on this video in just a second, and I'm going to ask you to look at the words and then pause the video, and I want you to write down all the words from this list you remember in any order. It doesn't have to be in the order that you see them, but in any order you want. And I have a theory about what's going to happen. And invariably when I do this in classes or on videos, this sort of turns out the same way. So I'm going to go ahead and put this list in front of you. Get something to write down, like a scrap piece of paper or maybe even on your notes to get ready. And don't write the words down until I remove the list, because that's cheating. So I'll put the list of words in front of you. I want you to look at it for 20 seconds. Don't write them down. And then I'm going to remove the list, and then, without seeing them, I want you to write down the words that you can remember in any order. So here we go. I'll put this in front of you. Hopefully this will work. Okay, let me get it centered here a little bit. I think you can see. Okay, 20 seconds starts now. Okay, so I'd ask you to pause the video at this point. Just hit stop on the button or on your video, and write down all the words that you can remember from that list. I'm assuming now at this point you have paused it and maybe you're back and you're ready. Now I'll put the list back up in front of you, and I want you to check and see which words you remembered. Now this works whether we're young children, whether we're older. It's sort of the same effect. We have a tendency to remember the words at the beginning of the list and the words at the end of the list. I'll bet you that you probably remembered the words ball, tree, hope, maybe person. I'll bet you got those pretty well. The words apple, car, flower, leap, maybe not so much. Those words in the middle are probably the ones that you forgot the most. And then when we get to the end, the words rust, card, yard, and blue, you probably remembered several, if not all of those. And when we do this in a group setting, it always works out that most people remember the first words and most people remember the last words in this list. And most people forget the ones in the middle. So maybe if you did this exercise, you can kind of see where you fell with that. So, and that demonstrates probably the primacy and the recency effect. Now, the von Restorff effect is a little different. The von Restorff effect says that if a strange or unusual word or event is placed in the middle of a sequence, then you have a tendency to remember that. Now, generally, we forget the stuff in the middle. But again, like if I win the lottery, let's say I win a scratch-off ticket, or I get a scratch-off ticket, and I win $10,000 right in the middle of my day at 1:23 p.m. I'm going to remember that because that's something very unusual that generally does not happen. Same with a list of words. I'm going to put another list of words in front of you, and you can do this again if you want. Same instructions as before. Look at it for about 20 seconds. Don't cheat. Don't write it down. And then pause it. And then I want you to write down again the words that you remember in any order. So this is a different list. And I want you to do the same thing you did just a couple minutes ago. I'll go ahead and get this focused, hopefully. It's a little tough, but I think I can do it. There you go. 20 seconds. It starts now. Okay, now hit pause on the video, see how you do. Okay, I'm assuming at this point you've given this a shot. I'll put the words back up here if I can. I know it's a little rough. I hope you guys can see these words. Again, the primacy and the recency effect. I will bet money that a lot of you remember the words at the beginning of this list, like red, stare, happy, book, and probably the ones at the end, pen, night, even, dust. Now, generally, the words in the middle are forgotten, but I will bet money that everybody remembered the word poop because it's a strange word, it's a funny word, it's a gross word, it's all that stuff. It's unusual by definition. So that's the von Restorff effect. Everybody always remembers the word poop, and I'll bet you guys did too. So hopefully that little activity illustrates those concepts for you. And we'll go ahead and call that the end of this part.